How to bulletproof your vibe coded app. Okay guys, it's not a secret that building a prototype with a vibe coding tool such as Windsurf, Cloud Code, V0, Base 44, Lovable, Bolt, etc. It's very fun and it's very exciting. You can ship a prototype within 1 hour or even a weekend sometimes if it's a bit more complex. But eventually, most of us already know or realized that these are just prototypes, and in opposing to what we had back in the days, that building the actual product would take a lot of effort, and then making the small iterations afterwards is slightly more simple. These days, building the prototype is very simple, but building the prototype accounts for only, I guess, 30 or 40% of what you can actually ship in production. And this is a huge challenge because people come with misconceptions and misalignment of expectations. They start building, and then shit hits the fan, and they start connecting more APIs. They need to handle the database, etc. And if you don't have an engineering background, or you don't have a developer in your team, or even you hired a non-experienced developer, you will start suffering and you will enter technical debt, which will mean that eventually what you will build will stay a prototype, and you will either have to start from scratch, which happened to me very often, or you will have to compensate and pay a lot of energy and time in order to fix the mess that was caused by vibe coding. Now, the purpose of this video is to share with you a few things that I did in order to make my vibe coding, or what initially started as a vibe coding app, more robust. Eventually, I hired developers that helped me. It's still not 100% robust, but I learned a lot about the process of optimizing, and the solution is already working in production and already serving clients. But this was achieved only after a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and this is what I want to share with you today in this short video. So let's operate under the assumption that you want to build fast. And since you want to build fast, you're not going to build in a test-driven, no TDD. TDD stands for test-driven development, which basically means that before you even build the thing, you already build the test that the thing needs to pass. So for example, let's assume that I have a login page. So before I build the login page, before building, I already think about how I can test. So a login page, eventually what I want it to do is send the customer a confirmation email, for example, and write the customer details. Right, let me go down a bit and write the customer into the DB. So what I can do, I can start by writing the test, and then iteration after iteration, writing the actual code and seeing if the code that I wrote is passing the test and achieves the result that I wanted. So this is test-driven design, test-driven development, and this is usually it's more for enterprise, and because it is very robust, but it lacks speed. So we got this out of the way, and we are not going to do test-driven design, and we are actually going to build and test afterwards. So the focus in this video is how you can test. So there are a few ways to test. First of all, as the founder, as the product owner, you test on your own. And you should test as often as possible, because you want to have a solid foundation. And if you commit and push and deploy something that isn't thoroughly tested, you might start building on a corrupt foundation, And then whatever you build, if you build on something that is already messy and is already dysfunctional, you will just accumulate more a bigger mess. So I suggest that you test on your own and you test as often as possible. This is pretty self-explanatory and obvious. Now, when testing, you have the happy path, which is you're only testing the actual functionalities that you expect. So in the login, if a user needs to log in, you're just testing that the login is functional, is working. So this is the happy path. And there is also something that isn't the happy path, which is looking for edge cases and trying to stress testing the app. And in this case, you need to start looking for edge cases. So in the login, what happens if you're already logged in from a different Chrome and you're trying to log in again, for example, or I don't know, just making up different scenarios. Or let's say you tried logging in with a password and you failed for 3 times, and then in the 4th time you succeeded. So what would happen? So testing different edge cases. So this is the next step, stress testing the app. Now, after you did this, what you can do, you can also this is basically manual QA. This is manual QA. What you can do, and what I did and I highly recommend doing, is going to Upwork and hire at least five, depending on your budget, hiring at least 5 QA experts. And these people, this is a profession. They already know in solutions, in apps, what can go wrong. So, for example, when I tested the registration page in ROASPIG, I didn't think about all the edge cases. For example, what would happen if a user would input a very long password, more than 100 characters? What would happen if a user would input a password that is basically blank? These are stuff that you don't necessarily think about, but the QA testers, because they already did this many times, they do think about this. So what I did, I hired 5 QA experts, paid each one of them between $20 to $200, and each one of them gave me a report that looked a bit like this. So the bug ID, the feature that was tested, the bug description, the steps to reproduce what needs to happen in order to see if the bug was fixed, a screenshot or a video showing the bug, what was the expected results and what were the actual results, and the priority. Is it critical? Is it not critical, etc. So this is actually a very good table that you can use, or maybe even ask the freelancers, the QA testers, to adhere to this table. This way, we got all the feedbacks from the QA testers and added everything as issues to the GitHub repository, and myself and my developer started prioritizing based on the priority and started fixing all the bugs. So this was very handy, having QA testers test the app, manually test the app. After finishing the manual QA, which basically, to be honest, is not finishing, because manual QA and QA in general, it's an ongoing process that you need to keep on doing all the time. But after you do like the manual QA and the app is somewhat stable, what you need to do, you start creating automated tests. An automated test, basically you use a framework such as Playwright or Selenium. And what you can do, you go to your code base with Cloud Code or Windsurf or whatever, and you just prompt the model to start writing tests for all the elements. Now the tests differ. They can be unit tests, which are just tests for very small components of the code. Small components of code. You have integration tests, which basically test the integration between components. And you have end-to-end. end-to-end test, which basically tests a whole journey of a user. Besides these tests, you also have a few. I'd say I'd break it down to shallow tests, which are called smoke tests. Basically, smoke test is you're just trying to, in a shallow level, just want to see if things are working. So for example, you write a smoke test, which is an automated test to see if user can register in the platform. You see if a user can generate what it was supposed to generate. So this is a smoke test. And you also have regression tests, which a regression test is basically making sure that the things that you now built don't break. Let me clarify. If you made an adjustment, you want to make sure that the adjustment that you didn't break what you already had in the code. So for example, in ROASPIG, let's say I had, by the way, ROASPIG is the solution that I built. It's a solution for automating media buying, allows you to generate creatives and upload creatives via API. So let's say initially we had just the capability to generate one video. And then we wanted to introduce a capability to generate a bulk of videos. So let's say 10 videos. So we built that and we wrote a test for it. Now we made an adjustment and we slightly changed the feature. And what we had to do next is do a regression test and making sure that while we adjusted the feature of the bulk generation of videos, we didn't create any bugs in the generation of a single video. So regression testing. By the way, these are all stuff that I'm not necessarily the biggest expert in the world about. If you're really interested in QA, just find a YouTuber that discusses only QA, or you can prompt the chat, but I'm sharing my learnings and observations about what I think every founder that is building an AI native solution must know. So regression testing. So this is in the realm of automated testing. So far, so good. And for this, as I said, I suggest exposing, showing Claude Code your core base. This way, the tests that you will build are going to be more accurate. But eventually, I believe that the repository of the testing should be separated from the repository of the actual code. This is just what I observe is more convenient and seems to make more sense. And obviously, for the automated testing, you can hire people on Upwork as well. The prices vary between $10 per hour to $300 per hour. It depends on the level of expertise that you need. But this is definitely something that I think that you need to keep in mind. So it's one thing to develop the solution, but it's another thing also to optimize it and make sure that it is reliable, optimize. So we have reliability, we have optimizing performance, which is speed, security. So there are many aspects that a vibe coder, etc. There are many aspects that a vibe coder doesn't necessarily think about when he's just building the prototype, which is fine. But these are things that you need to take into account because eventually you will hit a ceiling and you will have to incorporate thinking about this stuff if you want to take this serious and you want to actually monetize your app. Next, and this is what initially was the idea for this whole video, is using a solution for error tracking. And I chose Postog, which is a very famous analytic tool. And specifically in Postog, they have different capabilities. It's kind of similar to, it's somewhat similar to Google Analytics because it can help you with marketing analytics. It has elements similar to Microsoft Clarity, for example, heat maps and session recordings, which are also very valuable. But specifically what I wanted to discuss today is the error tracking capability. And basically you add a few lines of code from Postog to your code repository. And this allows you to track all the front-facing errors that users have encountered. As you can see here, in the last 90 days, here are all the errors that happened in ROASPIG. You can see the occurrences, which sessions, how many users were affected, etc. So obviously you can do this one by one, which is fine. But the cool thing about this is that you can connect via API to PostHog. And basically what I did is I connected via API via my code base of Waspig to PostHog. And what I asked Cloud Code, in this instance, I'm using Cloud Code within the terminal of Windsurf. And I asked it to connect to PostHog error analysis and analyze all the errors and prioritize them. I don't want to scroll too much up because it will show you the API keys. But eventually, this is the report summary. These are the quick stats. So 252 total errors, 46 critical errors, 33 users affected. Some of it is just small stuff. Some of it is more important stuff. Here's the list of critical errors, high severity errors, medium severity errors, medium to low errors, etc. And what I can do right now is use Cloud Code to say, okay, this is the error. Find the code in the repository that we need to fix, and then fix based on the error report. Now, obviously, a lot of this isn't. Waspig at the moment is stable. Some of it is just old stuff. Some of it PostHog flagged as critical, while it's not necessarily so critical. But the main idea here is the fact that it's so convenient to connect using Cloud Code to connect your code base to the error analysis by PostHog, and then you can start just cranking out fixes to the bugs, to the errors, and this way you can make your app more stable. I think that pretty much it. So let me add. Next is error tracking using PostHog connected via API with Cloud Code bridging to your code base. Okay, so quick summary, guys, of how to make your vibe coding app more reliable. And this, as I said, was written with blood, sweat, and tears. You must understand that it's one thing to build a prototype, but it's a different thing to ship in production. You must first manually test the happy path, then start stress testing the app. I recommend hiring QA experts to find different bugs. And one thing I didn't mention, each QA expert found different bugs because each one of them, we are different. Each one of us is unique. And although you would expect to see many common errors, many common bugs found by the QA testers, I say that a lot of them didn't find stuff that other people found. So it's not as if I believe one QA tester can find everything. So this was very interesting to see how each different QA tester found different bugs. So keep that in mind. After finishing the manual QA, start writing automated tests. Also, if you give access to your code base, this will help you write the automated test faster. And last but not least, use PostHog error tracking in order to see what are the errors that your customers are facing. This is basically provides you observability and understanding what are the customers encountering, what are your users are encountering, and then if you connect it to your code base, you can use Cloud Code or any other model, any other LLM to actually fix these errors and make your app more reliable. I think that's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Obviously, if you did, please leave a comment below. If you have any questions, also write them in the comment section. Make sure to like and subscribe. If you're in the marketing space and looking for solutions to generate ads faster at scale, feel free to reach out or just check out waspig.com. And until next time, keep on